On today's episode, I'm going to talk to you about estimating in accordance with project sizes and to ensure that you don't outrun your own capabilities and get yourself into hot water. Enjoy.
How old are you going to be before you start to experience life like you want it? I want to tell you right now, whether you like it or not, there is a better way to do business.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Business for Builders podcast. My name's Max, I'm your host. Thanks for joining us. If you're in podcast land, awesome. If you're in YouTube land, that's great too. Trust you get something out of today's episode. Don't forget, like and subscribe. Also get across to Business for Builders VIP. Get into that community, ask some questions. If you got a bit of an answer to it, have a crack at answering it, because we really got to get builders talking to builders. It's good for the person that might have some experience, because I'm obviously overseeing what's going on over there. But of course, the person that's asking the questions, it's always nice to get a response if you do put a question out there. So, it's really good. Don't forget, you can find out about more. I specialize in business coaching for builders. So if you're interested in that, you want to get some guidance, some strategic planning, some understanding about future development in your business, get across there, elitebusinessadvisory.com, hit the book a consultation, come talk to me, we'll see what's up. Right, let's get after it. Today's episode, as you can see on the board behind me, we're talking about estimating and project sizes. Now, what I want to say straight out the gate is this episode really doesn't relate, and I doubt whether I've got anyone in the audience that this relates to in this regard. This doesn't really relate to, or this is not about those building companies that are, say, project builders, if you're from Australia, New Zealand, or what we'd call production builders perhaps in the North Americas here, because their project sizes are pretty stable. They're the same right across the board, give or take. Okay, there's a lot of coming from the franchise world, knowing a little bit about the franchising side of things in the production builder side, in the project builder side. There's a lot of determination about how home sizes, inclusions, and prices. Not a lot of wiggle room there. Now, conversely, if you're in the renovation, remodeling, and very much individual custom homes, then this is going to be pertinent to you and your business and your situation. Because what really I'm going to talk about today is your need to be able to, really look at certain opportunities and figure out, how you're going to handle that. Okay, so really what we're talking about is projects priced between $5,000 and $2 million. Boing, right in the middle. And in your mind, if I said to you, what's your average contract value for the jobs that you've done over the last 10, 20 years? There'll be a number in your mind. You think, well, we do a few little ones, but we do mostly these big ones, so it's probably about 200,000 or whatever the case may be. And if you're doing that already, a lot of what I'm going to say is going to resonate with you. You'll be like, okay, I'm ticking those boxes. That's why my business is going well. Conversely as well, the guys that aren't getting momentum up within their business, and we talked about momentum a few weeks ago, this is where this is going to sort of hopefully clarify for you and help crystallize in your mind perhaps where the gaps are in your business, particularly as it relates to estimating certain projects. So what we've got to do is we've got to match our approach with the project size and the client. Okay, so we're talking now really, I guess, if we were to just do this for a second, really what you've got to work out is, am I going to work on small projects, mid-sized projects, or large projects? This is where we start at the beginning. We're like, right, what can you handle? So if you were to ask me, hey Max, where do you want to spend your time? I'll tell you right now, I want to spend my time right here. If you listen to the last episode, I was whining about competing with, and getting undercut and beaten by or beaten down on the smaller jobs. That's why this is the majority. So for me, I said to Jed one day, I said, I'm not going to do any more quotes under 250 grand. Because what happens is, as you go up here, right, and you start to look at these larger jobs, the competition comes down. Like, it's less. Why? Because it's more complex. The buyers are a lot more prudent, perhaps, than clients down here that say, oh, well, I just want to spend 15 grand on my bathroom. Like, you know, for me, I could quote a bathroom driving down the highway. Like if someone was writing shit down for me or I was talking into voice, I know that I could quote that like within a high level of accuracy. And so for me, I don't want to play in the small here. I've actually got an EBA builder client who won't look at projects under $500,000. That's us here, okay? And so, you know, but you can't just wake up one morning and go, well, I'm gonna go and build these big jobs. And you don't have a website, you don't use any kind of estimating and project management software, you're on your own, you're not really established, you only ever done $250,000 a year for the last 5 years, like you're kidding yourself. It's never gonna work. It's why, for me, going into Smith & Sons Coldstream a year ago, and then staring down the barrel of a 7-figured contract, to me, it's like a walk in the park. I got it, you know, but I'm a little old and I'm a little bit washed up and I've been doing this for 35 years. So I'm ready to go here. You know why? Because I know how to lead it. So, smaller renovations, right? They're a simpler estimate and it's a faster turnaround. See, I can get a phone call from a client. I got one right now on my desk. I could give her a call and go, hey, you got 2 bathrooms? I just want to let you know, they both started about 20. You're probably going to be in for 50 grand all up by the time it's all said and done and dusted. Now, at that point, it's either going to be offensive to her that I would come up with such a large number. How can it possibly be worth? I've got quotes for $12,000. Like, I don't want to live there, right? Because they're an easier job to do. There's less complex. So the competition is a lot greater at this level right there. So if you want to get out of the let's call it the rat race of small projects, then stop complaining and get better. Because I've gone and done, I don't know, a $7,000 job. We've done a $10,000 job. We've done a $70,000 job. And then all of a sudden we find ourselves with a 1.1. That's probably off the board, but whatever, you understand what I'm saying. So it's not about, oh, I don't know if I can do a big job. It's just those sorts of leads don't come along every day. But when that lead come into my purview and it was in my ecosystem, I knew exactly what to do. Right, mid-range clients, a little bit more detail, clearer assumptions, the scope clarification has got to be a bit better. And then of course, once you get into those larger ones, the structured estimate, detailed breakdown, staged approvals. So to give you an example, if you want to come and play in this larger contract value type ecosystem, just to give you an example, and this is where I guess, you know, I love being a builder and a carpenter by trade, and I love playing this game called construction because I really do. Now, to back that up, if you're not prepared to do what I'm doing right now, then you've got some growing to do. I'm not saying you'll never get there, but you can't short circuit this system, because if you don't have the discipline and you don't make it a priority to do the work that's needed to close these kind of deals, then you're living in a world of delusion and you'll end up hating the game because you want to do it on your terms. And it never ever does that. If I had my way, this year, Jed and I would have done $2 million. Instead, we've done less than 100 grand. And I thought I was the gangster. Okay, because we opened up 12 months ago, right in the middle of, a shit marketplace. But then all of a sudden it's like, oh, Max, you're lucky because you get a big job. You could do this too down here and have it pretty ordinary. This comes along and you cock it up. I don't know. I don't know you. I'd like to get to know you. If you think business coaching can help you out, maybe we should have a quick chat. Get across elitebusinessadvisory.com, hit the book a consultation button. Let's come and talk to me. Cost you nothing. Okay. So to give you an example, if you want to get away where the majority of the marketplace is playing because it's easy, right? And you want to get up here where you've got to get your shit together and be a little bit more organized and more professional and really understand what it is that you're about, you need to be prepared to build estimates that, like for me, that project has got nearly 650 line items in the estimate, of which 462 of those line items are part of the selection sheet, which is about 42 pages that I gave to the client. And they thought they were going to do their own interior design. Well, about a week and a half later, they're telling me, we've got an interior designer, which is good, but it's challenging also because now they're not inside of my ecosystem. They're not the designer that I would have picked, but it was too late. They told me last minute. If you're not prepared to sit down and build estimates the way I build estimates, and I don't build them because it's like, oh, look at me, I build estimates this way. The reason I do it is because it freaking well needs it. Like, I've got to have that level of definition. Like, the client's blown away that I can go to a fixed price contract. But it's not mysterious to me because I just build it in my head and I build, you know what? That was not even a template, friend. I sat there and I went, now what I do when I'm building an estimate, if I can give you some advice, and I'd encourage you, whether you're in North America, whether you're in Canada, Canadian home builders, you probably can do a course, basics in estimating. Some in the national home builders, something or other in the States, I'm sure there's the industry associations where you can just get a basic understanding and do a 3-hour course in estimating. And I know for a fact, the housing industry, HIA in Australia, I think New Zealand, and also Master Builders. I did one in Master Builders, okay? I know they've got them there. Go and do one of those, okay? It'll blow your mind. You'll be like, wow, now I've got some structure. Now I've got some understanding about how to go about pricing, okay? But it really, for you as a builder, you've got to have the ability to be able to sit there on a Saturday, and I'm not saying you've got to burn every Saturday doing estimates with 600 line items. That's not what I'm saying. But for me, I'm thinking about the end game. My goal is to get to the end of that job, have the client a raving fan, put that job into Canadian home builders for renovations over $1 million, and get some really good B-roll through the whole process. And mate, that is going to be an absolute project that I'm going to be proud of. So if that's the end game, what am I doing today to facilitate? Remember, we start well, we finish strong. If you don't start well, you got no chance of finishing strong either. And for me, I just keep the throttle on. Fortunately, I've got a great relationship with my client. He texts me and says, are you okay to chat? I've never had a client do that, ever. Clients just bully in and go, well, I own you. This guy's going to spend some serious money with us. And he sends me a text going, have you got time for a chat? Admittedly, it was on a Saturday. And I texted him back and said, mate, feel free, I'm in the office. Okay, and then we chatted about some very pertinent issues. And when he told me what he was going to do, that had a knock-on effect that was a positive. He didn't realize it, but when I told him, it was like 10:30 in the morning. He said, right, I'm going to go and have a beer. That's awesome. And this is the kind of fun that I'm having with this client, but I never lose sight that I don't take that for granted. That was just a little enjoyable moment. We connected on that, but now we move forward, And so, if you're going to want to, soar with the eagles, then you got to start behaving like one. Now, what I would say to you, I know you're not going to go from a $250,000 a year business up to $1 million business in 1 year. There's an evolution, there's a growth process. You don't speak the language of this business up here. Now, if you're at 1.1 million now, and you're doing projects here, but you want to do 10 million a year, I'll tell you right now, you don't speak the language of that $10 million business today. You've got to grow into it, just like I'd have to grow into it. No different, right? So figure out where you're going to be. And you might be in the small, you might be there for another 2 years in the small, but I want you to just develop the technique. That's the key. Because everything that I know at the top, I learned at the bottom. That's the facts. So don't be impatient. Okay, don't be hard on yourself, right? Just know that there is a process. Like I went and jammed. I auditioned for another rock and roll band, so I'm in 2 now, and then I said, look, they got a gig coming up in a month, and I said, look, pushing the envelope, learning 28 songs in 27 days. Some shit hit the fan with the existing guitarist, and they said, can you play in like this next gig's in 14 days? I said to him, look, as much as I will try to help you, you're going to have to downsize the playlist because I can't learn 20 songs in 10 days. See, even though I'd been playing for, I understand my limitations. They don't understand that, but I'm the one, I can't go and tickle their ears and say, sure, I'll play at that gig, when I know deep down, I just can't get the melodies of these songs that I don't really know in my brain fast enough. Like I would literally have to play, I wouldn't have a job for a week and a half. Because it's just about, remember, doing the 10,000 hours, okay? So it's just about doing your time and getting better, right? And failing forward, right? Because there's things that I've done wrong that are actually stuck with me and I go, I won't do that again. Right, so that's actually number one. So what we've got to do is we've got to match our approach based on the project size, okay, and the type of client that we're dealing with. Again, if you're down here, you're not going to approach a big baller with the same approach that you would if you were doing on a smaller project. Right. Second thing, what we've got to consider is the client personality, okay, and the financial capacity of said client. So this is why when you're talking, it's actually easier for me to talk to larger ticket clients about money sooner, because the reason they've got the money is because their head works. Someone down here who wants to do a $20,000 bathroom reno and thinks it should cost 12, no disrespect, but if they're only making 40 or 50 grand a year, they're going to spend a shit ton of percentage on that bathroom according to their income level. And they're worker bees, they're not self-employed people. That has something to do with it as well. Now, I know that there's some of these big ballers that are self-employed that are hard to work with. Don't get me wrong, I understand that. But what we need to be conscious of is exactly that. What is my customized approach to the client? What's the personality like? What's the financial capacity? Okay, so we've got to balance. If they're a nice person, but they don't have the financial wherewithal, we are kind of wasting our time. If they've got the financial capacity, but they're toxic in their dealings with you and they disrespect you and they think they can call you at 9 o'clock at night, I don't want to work for that person, okay? That one's pretty straightforward. It's all about trust and chemistry. So, harder to work with, yeah, like they can be if you get the wrong person. That's what I'm saying. It's like I say this, it's like dealing with people in business is a pain in the ass. It would be better if we didn't have to deal with people, but of course we don't have any business. So, necessary evil. Right, next thing we've got to do here is pivot based on pivot for external influences. Now, here I am recording this podcast today, and about 3 hours ago I was on the phone. I'd been trying to get hold of my business partner for a whole day, and he'd not picked the phone up, he'd not responded to my text message. It was a little bit out of character. So anyway, I get a phone call back today. Max, I've been in the hospital since, for 2 or 3 days, and I've got a broken arm. He says, I fell off my mountain bike. And it's just like, we're this close to starting this big job in about 3 weeks, and he's going to be in a cast for probably 4 to 6. So all of a sudden, it's kind of put some pressure on me. Now, fortunately, we haven't finalised the contract, nor have we established the exact duration of the project. What do you think I need to do now that I'm privy to that information about external influences? Now I've got to make sure that if Jed is only operating at 2/3 speed, I've got to accommodate straight away. He's like, we're going to need another human. Whereas we thought we were going to get away with our 2 lead dogs, now he's going to be backing up and we're going to bring somebody else in. That needs to be set in the budget. So fortunately, if you can say that, this happened before we went to contract. If we were underway and he did it, yeah, that's going to create a world of hurt. So marketplace changes, personal team challenges, and supply delays. These are the things that we need to allow for in our estimate, like I've got to now. Right, we've got to maybe, in my case, I've now got to redistribute tasks because we've got to now pivot and make up for this deficiency in our delivery system, right? We've got to adjust the timing. Completion date, it might change now. The client has added significantly to the amount of work. We've already talked about how the timeline we might extend. So in that, that extension for the increased scope of work that the client dropped on my desk on Saturday I might be able to then also add some time, extra time, because of the situation we've got with Jed's broken arm. So, right, so we've really got to highlight in our process where those deficiencies are, and then we've got to be quick to act as best as we can. So if this happened, if Jed broke his arm during construction, I've got to figure out a way where I can still create efficiencies and workabilities without compromising the timeline and or the build budget. That straight away is where I go to. I'm like, right, how much time am I going to lose? How much more money is it going to cost me now to make up for that deficit? Okay, so we've got to be ready. We've got to be ready to adapt. Now, something else, just before I move on, pivoting for exterior influences. I just was talking to you about how there's a lot of competition down here. Now, I'm not against doing small jobs. I'm just not going to do them for free, and I'm not going to do them for $25 an hour. And homeowners have got a problem with that because they don't understand. They don't understand my business model and how I price jobs, and that I'm trying to build a business, not just get a paycheck. Okay, I've got warranties to uphold. Well, if I'm not around in 12 months because I've gone broke, the warranty or the guarantee that I've given on workmanship isn't worth anything. And there's no dude to talk to because he's busy working at Home Depot or Bunno's or Placemakers or Lowe's or whoever you've got in your hardware in your town. But, so I've got to make sure that now, a classic pivot, and you're going to love this because you've been watching my stuff for a while, you know how I feel about cost plus. What I've done on my last couple of quotes is I've actually offered the clients alternative pricing. Okay? Now, this is a quote I have here. It is a three-page quote, 29,000. I've got the last section of this quote, because it's a fixed price, the number's on the back, alternative pricing option. Now, remember, I'm tired of quoting jobs. Remember, I'm not going to quote any jobs under 250, 28,000, 29,000. What am I doing quoting it? What I'm doing is I'm looking at these as mini billboards. If I can win them on cost plus, make the clients happy, it's another testimonial. It's just what I call a service product. So I outline and I give them a rundown, and if I had more time, I'd read you these 1, 2, 3, 4-ish, 4.5-ish, paragraphs of information, because what I don't want to do is give them the fixed price of, say, $28,000 plus GST, and then some other muppet comes along and says, I think I can do it for 14, and yet there's no commitment there because it's not a fixed price. It's kind of just like, I'm just going to say that to get the job, and then once I've got the job, well, too bad, because they're not interested in building a reputation. They're not interested in building getting a video testimonial from that client. They just got to make their freaking rent payment. That's all they're worried about. So I've outlined here that our two carpenters work for $65 an hour, and all of our materials and other third-party labour is cost plus 20%, because it's a small job, right? It's not going to be much. Okay, so if our cost was, say, 25 grand on this job, we would only be making 20% on top of that, 5 grand to management. That's all in. And so that is, to me, is a pivot, because I'm not a cost plus guy. I just don't like them. I don't like doing the accounting. I don't like waiting for invoices from trades who at the end of the job, 3 months later, they go, oh, by the way, here's my final invoice. And I'm going, mate, you can bash that where the sun doesn't shine, because it's all over, Red Rover. You're not getting it. And then all of a sudden I've got a legal issue. Like, that's why I don't like doing it. But because I'm controlling the finances, and our billing system works in such a way that it just takes a little bit more effort to make it work. But again, the strategy, the pivot, is that I'm sick of doing these quotes for people and then getting pushed out because somebody who's uneducated, who's not really building a business, I don't give them the option to do cost plus. So now that's a pivot for me. That's why I'm giving that alternative pricing as an option. Right. Now this one here, number 4, I'm going to put it for short, project. Is beyond your capabilities. capabilities. It's like I'm going back to grade 2 again. Okay, so you've got to be honest with yourself. Don't you dare talk a big game and know full well that you can't build it. Now, I don't mind taking a little bit of a chance on a jump or a bump up, right? Because I've done $1 million projects, doing another $1 million project is not a problem. If your average contract value is 50 grand, my advice might be consider strongly if you would ever get involved in quoting a $1 million project. I think it's above your pay grade. So, I think what happens is that we get greedy and we have this opportunity and then we think, oh, we'll just make it work and we'll figure it out. Do not do that to the homeowner. You're better off finding someone who has the capabilities, and you might get a referral fee of 1%. So if you get a $10,000 check, what's wrong with that? Now, you might also say, hey, I want to be privy, I want to be able to see the quotes, I want to learn. That's a good deal, right? So just be wise in that regard. Obviously the bigger projects like these ones here are going to require more clarity, more control, and more confidence, right? And so it's funny how that I bet you there's somebody watching this right now. Yeah, I'm talking to you. You're mid-20s, you go, I'd love to get $1 million contract like Max. Well, here's the deal. Be in the game for 35 years, get some gray hair, get a little bit overweight, and you can have $1 million project as long as you go through the whole process of spending 35 years in the game. See, that's the difference. Now, do I think you can be a 27-year-old and do $1 million project? Absolutely. Because if you've worked on $1 million projects, I went from doing average contract values of 100, 120 when I did a 5-plex townhouse development, which was over $1 million as well. Now, the difference was, which goes against what I just recommended, the difference was I'd worked with Phil on dozens and dozens and dozens of townhouses. So even though I wasn't the builder, I had a very good understanding of the network of trades, the suppliers, the build process. I was involved as a framing carpenter, finishing carpenter, exterior siding and soffit and soffites and cladding and shit, and doing the fit-offs. Like I was in it. And so for me, there was no intimidation, right? If you don't have that similar experience, then you need to reconsider if you get that big lead. So don't overcommit. Obviously, using the estimate program, you're going to need that to do a big job. Like if you don't know how to use a piece of software and do a 700 line item estimate, then you're taking on a project that's beyond your capabilities. Don't do it. If you got any questions in that regard, email me, max@elitebusinessadvisory.com and go, oi, what do you think of this? Or book a consultation, come talk to me. Okay, number 5. Keep the estimating process simple and repeatable. Now, just the mention of repeatability, right? Keeping it simple and repeatable, that means you would have to have done some time in the seat, because what you're going to do is fine tune when you look at a project. I just think the templating thing, when you're doing custom remodels, renovations, and custom new homes, yeah, you could probably get away with templates in custom new homes. That's probably got some, but for us guys doing renos and remodels, mate, because it's by the time I would, let's say, upload a template to another reno, I've then got to go through it line item by line item anyway to figure out what's appropriate to this new job that I'm on, unless it's an exact replica like a bathroom. And really from that point on, even kitchens, the variations and the complexity changes to the point where I'm like, by the time I modify a template, I might as well just go on and build one from the ground up. And honestly, for me to sit in JobTread and build, and I didn't even realize, I only looked today at the estimate for this major reno that we're doing and realized it's got 641 line items in it, of which, 462 were selections. That selection sheet, that frigging killed me. That I would templatize, absolutely. Because that selection sheet, far out. So much work went into that, more so than the actual, estimate itself. So, I really just don't, you can't create repeatability unless you've done it a few times. Remember, what you learn at the bottom is what makes you strong at the top. And so you've got to be patient with the learning process. So I would say to you, don't do templates. Build the thing out of your head. Go to a brand new, create a document, create a new estimate within your software, and just build it in your head. Now, JobTread is good in the fact that it does give me the ability to clone and sort of cut and paste, and there is some leverageability in that software. So it's not all bad. But on a job that's $1 million plus, by the time you grab a template and then you try and marry it up and go, all right, here's the template. Is it going to work for this project and what I've got to change? You're actually going to go through it line item by line item, because that's being a responsible estimator, is to ensure that nothing is left out or you've not double dipped and given yourself a hard chance of winning the job. So I guess the process has got to be simple. For me, everything gets ordered or gets supplied, delivered, installed. They're the minimum, everything that I think about. Then do I break up, some guys go, I'm just going to add electrical into one category. Well, I don't. If I'm doing a reno, there's going to be electrical, decom, and make safe. Like, I've got the decom and make safe. Inside of that will be plumbing, electrical, HVAC, anything that I need to do to ensure that it's safe for my workers to go in there, right? And then there'll be the electrical roughing, and then there'll be electrical finishing, okay? And so I like to break those up because I like more detail. Clearly, when I've got an estimate that's 641 line items, I like to know exactly what's going on in my estimates. Right, so, if you had the scope of work, the overarching, and then you're able to really understand the micro within that, what becomes repeatable and templatized is your approach to the next estimate. That's where I would start. If you've just got started or you've been in the game a long time and you've never really had a systematic approach towards estimating, then this is where I would start. Because for me, even being in it this long, I'm just so impatient. I'm just like, you know what? And I'll tell you what, here's what I do. I've got a couple of screens in the office. I've got a Word document, let's say, or a Google Doc, whatever you got. And it's got a lot of the common categories that go into a renovation of any sort, okay? Site establishment, decom and make safe, demolition, framing, electrical roughing, plumbing roughing, HVAC, insulation, like they're all very much repeatable. Those I tend to have on a Word document, and I literally just go and create another category, cut and paste. That is, some people might disagree with that, but what I do is I don't tweak templates, I tweak my document. And I'm like, oh, I need to add this. That should go in there. I don't use it every time, but it needs to sit in there. And that makes it a little bit quicker for me to then start to build. And then what I find as a level of confidence is, because I know how to build shit, when I'm looking at the category, I'm like, I visualize what it is that I need to do that scope of work. And it just, when I get to the back end of my estimate, like the client saying to me, on a fixed price, are you sure? And I'm like, I am 99% sure. Why? Because I know how to build shit in real life, and therefore I know how to estimate it because I've already built it in my head. All the contingencies that go into it. And this one we're ripping roofs off, so there's all kinds of tarps and contingencies, and we're gonna, of an 8-hour day, we're gonna lose an hour up the front and we're gonna lose an hour up the back for about 4 to 6 weeks, because we just have to button the thing up like it's gonna piss with rain every night. We don't have the luxury to leave that lid open. We've got to close it up every night. And so building that gantry takes time. So every week we're losing 10 hours. That's got to be, I've got to make allowances for that, just to give you an example. Right, estimating's got to be flexible, you've got to be adaptive, and it's got to be client driven. You've got to do what speaks. So for me, I'm building it over here as a budget for us builders, but then over here, the first 3 categories is selection, introduction, and for this job, it's selections basement, selections main floor, selections second floor, actually, and then there's selections exterior. That's where the 471 lines come into it. So, it's very focused, much focused, because remember, the selections I get from the client and the designer that help me form the specifications, that will help me in the pricing mechanism, will then help me with going to contract once I've got the proposal sorted out, okay? So, all of these things here, make sure your approach is suitable to the size of the job and the client. Make sure that you understand, or you get some understanding of the client's personality and their financial capability. You've got to be ready to pivot for external influences. Shit happens outside of your control, or pricing. Like, you've got to have new strategies sometimes, like I was talking about with my alternative pricing. You've got to make sure that the project is within your capabilities to build confidently. I don't mind a little bit of a stretch, okay? But I don't want you going necessarily from doing average contracts of $50,000 and $60,000, $70,000 basements and then ripping the lid off and putting a second story up. Like, you could find yourself in hot water. And then, of course, establish the process, make sure it's simple and repeatable. And I think if you're patient and you've got good lead gen and you're committed to learning, developing yourself, investing in yourself, the more you learn, the bigger the jobs you can do, which means the more you can earn. Hope that helps. If you've got any questions around that, email me, max@elitebusinessadvisory.com. Be patient, there's a few coming in. But if you want to jump on a Zoom call, happy to do that as well. Give you 30 minutes of my time just to chat with you about how you are doing business. There's actually the guy that I was playing rock and roll with on the weekend. He just asked me what I did. He turns out to be a carpenter. I'm a carpenter. I told him I do a podcast. He just texted me before I recorded the show and says, I think we need to sit down and have a chat because I think I could build a better business. So, that's just, that's what we need to do. The more we learn, the more we earn, the better we get. Don't forget, like and subscribe. Get across to B4B or Business for Builders, VIP on Facebook. Get amongst that community. If you've got anything, any other questions, hit me up, drop a comment. Do whatever you need to do to build a better business. More you learn, the more you earn. Go build a kick-ass business. See you in the next episode. Cheers.